I know we didn't finish. So what I do want to get it, first of all, let me go back and see, because we kind of went straight through. If people had questions about what we talked about on Monday, right? You know, any of the things, and I'm sure it was like too fast, you know, you'd have to delve into the details, but any burning questions? That's my first question for the group. And my second question is, I kind of rushed through some of the fluid survey integration piece, sort of promising you that it works, but if you want me to kind of slowly walk through that again, or whether we should just kind of go on to the indicators, or whether you want me to go on to the indicators to make sure we cover that, and then go back for any questions. Those are your options. Does anybody have strong preferences?
I'm inclined to go on to the indicators, but go for it, David.
Yeah, and I think maybe circle back at the end just to kind of review the actual integration of fluid surveys to see it's kind of a key component on the technology side. Maybe do adding one really quick or just a quick on that. I think, and Brendan, if you could mute, I think that may be you, David. You can mute. Thank you.
Okay, hang on a second. So we've just been playing with indicators a lot this morning anyway, and last night. So let me just open one more instance, and I'll go back. So does anybody disagree with just kind of plowing forward with indicators and then circling back if we have time and inclination?
No, I agree. That's a good idea.
Okay. So let me hide this. Okay, so let's hit indicator fun. The thing to know about indicators is, it's not saying much here, but I'll also kind of touch on the other things in the agenda, which are the directories and the dashboard and the reports. I want to make sure people just see those and know they exist. But there are really there are two kind of completely different types of indicators in the system. One are called calculated indicators, and one are called data entry indicators. I'll start with data entry indicators. Those are types of indicators where it's not really drawing any data from the system. It's basically just the administrator setting up to say, we want to enter data for a particular, at every quarter or every month or every year, and we want to set it up so that we can enter the data directly in. And a lot of times this is set up, there's kind of two instances of this. One is like, again, I mentioned this before, but I'm just reviewing, is that the data is coming in from the outside. We're not really generating this. It's, it's a malaria project. We want to get malaria rates across of our 27 countries because our ultimate goal is to reduce malaria. And so we want to be able to kind of see that in the system, right? And that's sort of a long-term goal. The other times it's just maybe we're using MandE in a sort of lighter fashion where, like right now, a lot of times the project, in order to get their indicators, they put a data call out quarterly to each, to their managers in the field and say, please send me your indicators on the spreadsheet, and this is a way of just saying it's no longer, we're not going to collect them from spreadsheets anymore. We're just going to set it up and you enter it into the system. So that's the data entry, and the other one are the calculated indicators, where it's actually pulling data entered over the course of time, and you then calculate it with kind of a query builder. So I'm going to start with the data entry indicators. For that, I'll use some that I just set up. Yesterday in order to demonstrate a few things. But actually, let me just set one up from new. That's probably the best way to do it. So you start out with the same interface, even though it sort of branches off into two different types of things. So it's ultimately going to be displaying both types of indicators on the same dashboard, which is here, right? So both the calculated and data entry are displayed in the same place, but the drill downs look different once you get into them. So you can see here, it'll say data entry or versus calculated here on this column under sources. All right, so so you create the new indicator. You create an indicator name, Brian's Pool Indicator. You create your short name, BCI. And these kind of just show up in different places. The metric name is sort of what you're counting. So for example, maybe the indicator is, this is something we're just mocking up for something, the number of female participants who are in cooperatives in millions. But then when it shows up on graphs, you want it to just say, female participants, right? So cool metric, right? So it's just a little bit different, like how it shows up on the chart in the drill downs versus, what the full name of the indicator is.
And was that an original request of HFG, just historically, or?
Well,
the three namings of the same.
No,
like an evolution.
It was more organic. Like you didn't want to have this chart this huge, or it didn't fit, or it's too small, or something like that. Or you want to be able to have you want to be able to name it because some of them are like these names are like in the project management plan, and they want to have it the full name as the official name in the in their plan, okay. And then it's like what you actually want to display on the screen in certain situations. Okay. Influence here. This is a managed list. It's under managed list. The default one is attribution versus contribution. It's kind of an M&E concept, but attribution, sort of related to what I was saying before, is if it's an indicator that can be attributed to the work that we did. It's a little bit more of like our outputs. Then that's called attribution. If it's contribution, then that's something like we're contributing to this, but we can't really say that like if malaria went down, it was our our effort. You can't prove that sort of thing, but it's like if malaria goes up, there's some kind of problem, right? If we, so the type here. This is just impact input. These are just kind of attributes at this point of the indicators. Display format, number of percent. That'll just doesn't really do much except show it a percent sign or not. And the type here is where we're putting in right now. We're putting in data entry for this one. So here you put in deliverable, the period type. So let's go with the middle toaster here of the quarter.
Quick question.
Yep.
When you change it to percentage, would that change it from like 0.1 to 10%, or would it make 10%?
It means that when you enter 10, it'll show a percent sign on the display.
Okay.
That's all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then the aggregation types. There are 4 of these data entry indicators. There are 3 different data entry types or aggregation types. So on the first, there's the total, the cumulative, and the average, and just yes or no. So the total basically is when it's showing up on that first screen of just like the highest level view of the indicator, it will, and it shows Q1, Q2 through Q3, Q4. The total will, let's say you're entering data for 10 provinces, will total up 10 provinces for Q1 and show that total, and the total for Q2 and just show them separately. Cumulative will add the data from Q1 to Q2, so you can see kind of overall change over the life of the project. Okay. Average will take, if you have 10 entries in Q1 across for 10 different provinces, it'll take the average. So, what's the average, mortality rate for under 5 for each of these provinces, and it'll take, 3% across. So let's go with cumulative just to pick one. I went over these. Display format. Default data source. So like when you're entering data, a lot of times the data might all come in from the same place. Maybe this is WHO organization data or UNESCO data or something like that. So you don't have to enter it each time. You can just enter it once and that will become the default, but you can change it if your data is coming in from somewhere else. And these are just sort of display options here. Display precision. You can make it for decimal points. number format, description. So sometimes you might want to add here what the actual full description of the, what the data are. Okay, so that's step one of creating a data entry indicator. Step two is then you define your scope. So basically, people are going to enter rows of data for some kind of scope. For some, kind of defining what the rows of data are going to be. So right now we have in the system 4 different options, or 3 different, I guess. Activity, country, and program. And country is really just aligned to the highest level geography we have. It probably needs to be renamed. But that's probably the most likely scenario, is that people are going to entering data on geography. What's your rates of this at the geography level? Just got a request this morning. There's 3 different levels of geography to possibly add, maybe the second level by district. So that I don't think will be too hard to code, but I've given up saying that should be, kind of said it would be simple, but, and maybe there'll be another round of customization that was also requested this morning by Kate in Zambia, to maybe just define custom scopes. Like she wants to be able to add it by gender or by age group. So maybe just creating a new managed list that just defines the custom, what these are on these lists based on what scope create a new scope and create a custom list associated with it. Which, again, I'm hesitant to speak to the developers, but it seems like it could be something we could do, So then here, so you might not be collecting data from all of these, so you can pick, like let's say we only are, these are the 9 provinces, however many there are in Zambia, but we're only collecting this particular indicator from these 6, or you can select all, and then you save the changes. Okay, and now you've pretty much set up your indicator. Okay, and then when you go back here, what did I call it? Brian's cool indicator. You should see it here. Maybe like that, I'll see it. Skeleton staging, right? Okay. Phew. We can search for it, hopefully.
I saw a checkbox called published. Maybe you should.
Yeah, I'm an administrator, right? So I'm an administrator, so I can see I can see everything. This is the administrator view. But that is true. I should say that there's 2 other things here. Published. That means it'll be showing on the front on this indicators page, and show on dashboard means it'll be showing on the very front page. Like this is one of our most important indicator things that we're tracking. But we had it anyway. So here's Brian's cool indicator. So there's 2 new things that can happen now. It's the entering data phase. So the first one is you're going to enter data based on, you're going to pick your project year for, so let's say this one. You add it. And then now, because we set up the period or frequency or whatever as quarterly, it sets up the 4 quarters, and it sets up a baseline and a target. The baseline and the target are always annual, even if it's monthly or yearly or quarterly, just to not be insane to have a baseline quarter. Nobody takes that closely. So there's always an annual baseline and an annual target, and then the data entry for quarter. So then you could just enter your numbers. And you see here this number is set up the WHO as the default data source. So that just comes in, as a default. And then then you kind of set up, we don't know what this is, but so let's just say we're setting up numbers here. There's 50 cool things. And this one, 40, 70 and cool things here. 39 here. These are all the baselines. 65, 99. This northern is very big. Save the changes. And then you can enter your date. And basically, they'll just, in the field, they'll say, everybody enter your, go ahead and enter Brian's cool indicator data for Q1. And then at the end of Q2, they'll do that. And that's pretty much how this thing works. And then the other thing to put in is the targets. Don't remember if you have to save before or after.
Ask if you tab over, is it?
I don't know. 44, 55. I'm just adding random things here. Okay, so now the last piece of a data entry indicator is seeing your data. Oh, this here is the bad view of it. This is a legacy view, which we have to fix. That keeps coming up. You know, we have to. I put in a ticket last night that some links go to a legacy view. Brendan Small, you should be seeing that. So then, ultimately, all this really does, and I'm anticipating in the future people are going to want more, but when you actually want to view the data, then it's not very visually exciting. But you can say, you know, it's only up to Q1 right now, so you can take that out. Maybe I only care about these provinces, get the data. So it's basically a pretty straightforward data in, data out. You can download to Excel. And now you have your data all in one central data repository that you set up fairly flexibly. So just as a peek into the future, I think, just in terms of anticipation, there's probably going to be more development around this, I would imagine. More visualizations of these, creating more custom scopes, as well as, I think, what would be really one step above would be somehow to be able to, like when you're entering data, set this up a little bit more robust so that you can kind of have another column. You know, we have just rows that enter in one thing, but I'm not sure how much development this would be, but it'd be really nice to have create multiple columns, right? Yeah. Because maybe you want to, you know, central province, male, female, or central, you know, we can kind of actually do at least disaggregate these in a couple of different, you know, in a couple of different ways. So right now it's just one row and one piece of data, but it wouldn't be. I mean, I don't know how hard it would be. That's for you developers to tell me to expand this out so that you can add multiple columns. Okay, that was data entry indicators.
Did you just go back to the previous screen where it showed the graph on that one line?
Oh, yeah.
And then you get
this is again wrong.
So is that showing baseline, the graph? Because you didn't enter in 4 quarters of data.
Hang on a second. These are other.
No, but yours was second.
No. Okay, good question. David, good question. It is because we set it up as cumulative, it knows that at least by Q3 and Q4, we'll have had at least this much. So it's sort of just, let me change this, right? Choose the type to total. And I'm confident with this because I tested it last night. Gotcha. So there's just Q1. And you can see also here is the target bar. I guess we didn't make the target that I randomly added in. And then you can go back. If I wanted to go back and change it to average, I'm not 100% how the yes. I'm avoiding discussing the yes/no exists because I'm a little bit unsure exactly what that does. So now you see on these indicators, by the way, the scale changes dynamically, which is both good but could be a problem depending, you know, because it's visually like that might be something else that somebody might get concerned about. That like there might be minor changes that are looking huge because the scales aren't definable.
I'm not an expert in this sort of widget, but I think we can do better with that whole graph widget. It's a little bit busy, and if we did something a little more like a sparkline with maybe a little bit of text, but not just a straight, simple sparkline. Do we have any experts who can work on this sort of thing?
For data viz?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of some things we're thinking through.
It's not horrible right now. I'm just looking at it and thinking it could be better.
Yeah.
Agreed. I don't know if we have an expert.
There's the data viz people, but no like senior data viz other than our collective knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can do something without an expert. Maybe one of us can hack at it for a little bit and come up with something. Just an idea for later.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make sure we get to the second half, which is the calculated data indicator, so I don't have to have a third training. So I'm going to show you now. This is, hopefully I won't, this is now the HFG one, and I'm just in here because I was working on mocking something up using this feature this morning with Michael Nezher. For our proposal, they wanted us to create some indicators and have a dashboard for them. So Michael just put in, various data.
Does it look any better if you zoom out one? Sorry.
Probably. If I can get it to that. So I'm going to zoom out. Yeah. How's that? Too low?
Oh,
Too small?
it's more readable, the ones that were really squished. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Go back to your presentation.
Yeah, let's do how about 75%? Okay, so we can read it. All right. So what I'm going to do first of all is just see, this is one we're mocking up just this morning, and they wanted to say year 2. So Michael and I kind of collaborated on mocking up some of this data. So but we might still be needing it for another screenshot. So I'm going to clone an indicator, which is also a nice lesson. So it basically just creates a new one with copy at the end. So I'll just why don't I just call it new door test or something. So this first part here on the left should look familiar. It's the same, interface, but in this case, instead of picking, where do we pick it? Metric type. This is now read-only, but metric type of data entry. It's calculated. It's read-only because we already have all sorts of other data that's related to a calculated data entry in there. So once we get here, there is one. You can, in this case, you just put in the baseline. It's one baseline that you want for each, which would be more. This is more about like what was the baseline before the beginning of the project, and then above that, Brendan is looking into as we speak. There should be target boxes here where you say what your target is for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it's just one piece of data for the overall metrics. So this is the number of females in learning in some kind of cooperative in Ethiopia or something like that. So what we do here is you basically build a query. And so there's a bunch of steps to this. Most cases, the kind of default case is that you're building your indicators out of data entry in your work plan, data entered in your work plan And then specifically data entered sort of that's in your work plan, most likely also including the fluid surveys that are pulled in to your level 4. In this instance, it's called deliverables. In Zambia, it was called benchmarks. Okay, go away. This is all some other pages. It's probably a bug. Okay, but there's sort of there's another. You could also be doing indicators based on organizations, which is sort of divorced from you can be counting like the number of organizations in your system or that you worked with that are targeted. Like how many organizations have you partnered with is sometimes a big thing that we're trying to track because that would be the goal. Or how many, organizations have been beneficiaries and things like that. So if that's the case, then it's you pick one of these checkboxes is based on organizations in general, or this is based on organizations that have been the consumers of our, how many organizations have we helped? But for the most part, and what I'm going to demo is that it's based on deliverables. So the first, and of course, for different deliverables, there are different types of data that are collected based on different deliverable types. There are different types of data that are collected. Because deliverable types are defining what the fluid surveys are, which define what data collected. So in this case, it's kind of like a wizard. You pick a deliverable type. And why don't I just pick a new one, just for fun? So in this case, let's pick, as I create a new one, capacity building. Right. So this here is a list of deliverable types, level 4 types, and as you remember, those might have multiple fluid surveys attached to them, right? So I'm picking capacity building, and then the next thing I pick are which tabs, let me go back, maybe pick one that has multiple. I could pick partnership, let's say, hoping for one that has multiple tabs, but I'm going to give up if not this one. Training event is always handy. All right, I give up. So if there are multiple requirements, multiple tabs associated with that deliverable, then you'll see a drop down. Which survey do you want to pick from, basically? Or which, right? And then what it does here is it says there are other types of deliverables that also are using the same survey. And it gives you the option, I think, did we pick training event? So if there are other deliverable types that use the same survey that are kind of, it says you want to also pull data from those deliverable types as well, because maybe you didn't realize that we set up 2 different deliverable types that create using the same survey, and you really want to make sure you're aggregating all that same data. Maybe you created, indoor training type and outdoor training types, and both of them have one. I totally made that up, but all of them have one survey that has general information, and the second survey that collects different types of data. So if you picked one that's being used by multiple, it gives you that option. Finally, and let's hope. Okay, so then it's saying what data do you want, what fields do you want in your survey, in your indicators, and let's just pick them all because good. So that they can be possibly used in your indicator. If the system does not yet know has never used this particular fluid survey question that you've just picked in an indicator, it's going to ask you, is this a number or is this a string? Because the database is kind of dynamically creating a field for it. Also, if it's a number, then it can actually be used for a calculation. If it's a string, it can really only be used for sort of a disaggregation category, right? I don't remember what this was that I just picked, but I think it was a number-looking thing. So I'll pick that. How many reports were provided, male, female, and next, build query. So if I wanted at this point, I could actually add another type of deliverable type. So I can say, even if it's using a different survey, I can kind of say, because maybe it's very male, female, it's also something that's being collected by a different survey and you want to combine them. Like I want to know how many men went to either a training or a conference. But let's just stick with one for now because So then you have various aggregation options. So sum is a good one, count, weighted average. And in Zambia, we have a new one that, again, Brendan just built that has not been pushed out to HFG yet, which is a percentage calculation. If you choose that, then it'll ask for both the numerator and denominator when you're looking for that, when you choose that. But right now I'm in HFG, I can, so that one isn't here yet, so we haven't pushed that code yet to HFG. Let's go with a simple sum. So now you pick your columns to aggregate. So let's say I want to know how many total people were trained. You can add your where clauses. I'm afraid to add any, but because zero. Yeah. And keep in mind, I just kind of randomly picked this, so I don't know if there's going to be any data behind this when at the end. That was probably a bad idea. But so you can add where clauses with an and, where clauses with an or. This is kind of an important box here. Only include completed deliverables. So are you counting? Let's say you're setting up. You might be setting up a deliverable for the future, or that you never completed. So, depending on what it is, like maybe you're counting the deliverables in the future. That, in that case, you want to uncheck that because you want to include everything. But, probably the default case is you want to know how many people were trained. You want to only complete, or something that you did, you want to only complete ones that were marked as completed, not things that you're setting up to do that you never actually marked as done. So, that could be a kind of part of the where clause, but it's sort of set up right now as as its own default thing. Also, when you get into these kinds of things, you get into a little bit of craziness of what you're pulling and what the dates are. So, for example, when you mark something as a completed deliverable, then a new date says completed date comes up, and you enter that. So if it's based on completed deliverables, then it's going to be pulling based on the completion date. If it's not based on completion deliverables, it's going to be pulling, like the question is what quarter to put this data in, and it'll be based on the end date of the deliverable itself rather than the completion date. So you can pick like something to disaggregate by, and you see here the list of, these are the fluid surveys, and this is sort of everything else in the hierarchy above that fluid survey. So you can, let's say, I want to do, disaggregate by program name. I'm going to add another one just for fun, disaggregate by I don't know, task country. That sounds good. And this is similar to what we had before. I'm not sure exactly why it's showing in different. The total cumulative average is also, it's more about the display, in that chart. So this is about, are you actually summing the data? Within each quarter, are you summing the data? And the cumulative is like over the quarter, are you cumulatively adding up, over time? And somewhere along the line, you save the query, cross your fingers. It doesn't work unless you cross your fingers, I found. And so it's saved. What it's doing here, I believe, is as soon as you do that, or somewhere, it's creating it should be pulling in, it's adding to some massive indicator data table in the database. So it's kind of pulling in these new columns that we set up and everything into the database, and pulling the data in for if there's any data there. Now, again, I have no idea whether there's any data here, but here you can preview the indicator. There is nothing, but maybe there's some in some other years. So, but again, this is not because this is probably just because there's no data. There's no data in there. So if I went back, for example, to the ones I was working on with Michael for real, or just let's pick one that's here again is the wrong legacy code. calculated quarterly indicators. Let's just pick that. That looks pretty. So here's sort of the standing one. If you drill into the details, maybe. Oh, this is a calculated one. Sorry, guys. Just looking for a data entry one. Oh, here's a calculated one. All right, these are the ones that we work on. Let's go to year 2, because we were setting it up for year 2. Oops. Sorry. And then you hit the details. And you see here it sets up this visualization. You can mark things. In this case, I added a fluid survey form that said youth or not youth as one way of doing it. So it'll disaggregate by that. I only put youth for one of them because that's what she was trying to get. And you can play with these. Sort of. And it sets up these tables, and then participation by region. So these various disaggregations get set up. So if you look in, that's pretty much how it works. It's also supposed to drill down. I feel like this has been broken lately. But I think when you drill down, it'll show you all. What it's supposed to do is show you all the deliverables, that are kind of feeding into this data. Like, where does this number 17 million come from? But I'm not sure why that's not working today. It was working last.
Is it because you reduced the graph? Like if you click.
No. So let me just. But if you want to look, maybe just if I show you here, just so you can see some nice stuff. Where is it? JTA. This is the actual JTA one, and they use indicators. I might have mentioned the other day that some of the different projects, like HUD project, isn't using indicators at all right now, and JTA isn't using the quarterly reports at all. But the JTA one has lots and lots of indicators of important stuff. It probably looks better if you go to last year. Number of health workers receiving training, family planning provision during patrols, and you can kind of drill in, and this is real data. You can see by country region, because this is, what they have is deliverables set up where they say, in this region, we went in and we did this kind of thing, and we collected all this data, and then they created this custom indicator, and it's all just being pulled in based on this family planning by program name. They have 2 different programs, and let's just see here. So this is what it's supposed to look like. So, because the question often comes up, what do you mean it's 8,723? By my records in my spreadsheet, it's 8,440 or whatever, and then it's like, well, this is where all the data is coming from. And just so you can see here, they have lots and lots of data in their system. They set up these site visits and these tally sheets. They're using the multiple rows. So measles by male, female, so they can aggregate, disaggregate, sexual violence, pneumonia, simple cough. So they go to these visits to this particular outreach clinic, and they say which clinic it is. So this is like a deliverable type of outreach clinic, and every time they go to a clinic, they fill in all this data, right? And then they create all those indicators based on it. So it can get pretty powerful.
And right now they're doing the paper version and then data entry.
I think, I don't know exactly. So they're mainly using it, kind of the way it was designed, in terms of getting those deliverables and getting the custom indicators in there. All right, any questions on that? Nope. Okay, so just to kind of round out things, just reporting. This is just simple stuff. So it's pretty easy to create. These are just sort of like SQL queries that you create if you just want to kind of go in and like get me my data, get data out of here, and then I want to play with it myself. So we just added these things, but the thing that's kind of new is adding the raw data. So this is basically you pick your deliverable type, and it has to be by, if you want to kind of get data out of Fluid Survey, it has to be by a deliverable type because that's where the surveys, otherwise we'll have millions of, you can't just pull all the data out of the system because you might have hundreds of different surveys with different kinds of data, but you pick a deliverable, on the deliverable type level. What was the one we were working on? Just for example, training event, and then download raw data. If there's multiple tabs of data for a particular deliverable type, it'll create multiple tabs in the Excel spreadsheet when you download it. And now we'll see if there's any actual data. So there was somewhere along the line some actual data in here, but not a heck of a lot. So we might have seen that data, but maybe it wasn't part of a completed deliverable, those kinds of things. We have to figure out why. So that's that. And then the project overview, I think I showed screenshots of, but just showing this and various. These are kind of, as I at the very top, one of the things we wanted Monday is, what activities and what are we doing towards advancing each one of the results frameworks. So that's what these reports, some of these reports are showing. This one is showing like, it's more of like these are the number of activities by status, these are number by program, by technical area, and this is like, we've done these 8 activities for improved financing, these, or whatever, 5, I can't see, 6 for health governance, et cetera, and so forth. And then this is sort of the reverse view of it. If you want to look by that, it'll show you in your little chart that you had 5 primary activities focused on this particular one. And well, let's do this. There's a few other like little, reports. Just kind of on-screen reports where that way people would just define at various times, which you can show or hide. So this one's filter results by lessons learned. So there's some reports that look like this, and then there's the quarterly report. A new feature we just added is there's a main report, and then there's noteworthy accomplishments and collaboration with cooperating agencies. So let's just look at the main report. Again, we're in staging, so I have no idea where there might be any data. But let's just say this is for a particular quarter. And you can either select a particular program or no programs, which means all programs. And then you can view it in your browser. There's a new feature somewhere along the line, you can add pictures to it. So this is a test picture. This was supposed to be my mock-up of the data structure of MandE, which I decided was not helpful at all, so I didn't bother to show you. But here is, you can go in here and actually edit progress notes and edit pieces of the, right there on the screen. It should show up. That is what I changed, I believe. So it's basically pulling different pieces of the data. So as you're going through the reports, you don't have to kind of go anywhere else to either, hey, this data is missing, I want to add it, or I see a typo, or whatever else it is. And so it's actually pulling from different places in the database and popping it up and pulling it back in. I'm not sure where I just added. Good time I'm presenting. Okay. So, and the HUD implementation, just if anybody starts working on HUD, has really, this is the feature that they're using a ton, and in fact has other things where like they could pull in all the list of documents, any documents that they've uploaded, you know, and they're using it as a monthly report, and they actually can create new deliverables, you know, new work plan elements from the report with just one standard type. So it's kind of like, again, their main interface for working with the system is with the what they call the report, and that's what sort of their main need. And just now they're sort of thinking about, we might also want to get indicators out of here and do custom data collection and things like that. So they're really using it to like add a lot of data. That's how they go. That's how they do it. So create new notes instead of just like reviewing the notes and downloading. And I suppose anything else that's begging to be taught. Files. There's the file directory. And all these are somehow, they're uploaded and associated with the OneHub thing through the work plan, but you can also find things here, as well as organizations and people and things like that I think we discussed. I'm going to stop there. We have 9 minutes to leave time for robust discussion. Time for biting into my apple. Anyone have any, let's start with questions. Things that wholly don't make sense at all.
Nothing yet.
Let's look around in Cambridge. Well, look, Erica. I'm not saying you should know how to.
It's a quiz tomorrow.
Yeah. Kidwell?
Nope, I don't have any questions or comments anymore.
Okay. Do you think you'll be able to take this over? Does it seem like you kind of understand the system enough now to be able to support it?
Yeah, I think so. I'm getting into it this week. I'm working on a couple of bugs on JTA, and I'll let you and Dave know if I get really stuck. But it looks good on the surface.
Yeah. Good. Don't scratch the surface too much, though.
And then also, like,
I saw some scary stuff in the bowels of it. There was one thing that Blaze and I independently fixed in JTA, like one little typo, a missing word in a bit of HTML. And it's like, in that particular file, there's so many levels of like a script inside of a script inside of a script. It's kind of scary looking, and that might need some cleaning up.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be your job, so that's good.
And I think at some point too, maybe as we get closer to, if we have a deployment that we're going to need extra help on, maybe do a quick behind the code.
Yeah.
That would be more, right? That would be more of, I guess us now driving it and bringing in Fonwalk and everybody else and just kind of showing the general architecture and then going from there.
What about Nancy? Anybody in Bethesda? Nancy, Matt? I don't know if Nick could make it or not. If Nick is here.
Yeah, I'm just more interested in the management of it and how we can communicate better among the team members.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it makes sense with what's been presented. It looks good. I think with more hands kind of inside of it and getting some more actual interaction with it, I think will come more knowledge. But
that's just discuss that.
Okay.
How do I
we
get admin access to some kind of sandbox?
You could ask me. I'm just trying to figure out which the best implementation is. Ideally, that should be the demo database, but the database is far behind in terms of code updates. So I'll probably just give you maybe this HFG staging one for now and go from there.
Okay.
When you do screenshots on it today?
Yeah. So yeah. And let me give the last word, if possible, to Brendan Small, who's the only one around here that's actually coded in this thing. Brendan? He's too busy coding. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, I was working on some debugs. What's the question?
Just, I'm giving you the last word as the only person who's actually, well, I guess as Brendan Kidwell has, but who's been spending the last couple of months coding. One big thing to tell the developers about the code in terms of how solid it is or how easy it is to understand or pick up.
Well, I'm coming from a perspective of this is kind of my trial by fire of learning this framework in general. So I imagine those who have coded in this environment before will probably find it a little easier than I. The stuff generally tends to make sense. Part of the issues I've bumped into is there's like large amounts of sort of either redundant code or uncommented code that's pretty heavily abstracted that can sometimes make things a little more complicated than it needs to be. But since I'm learning the framework still, I'm still not in a position to make suggestions as to how to necessarily improve that. But all in all, it's not the worst thing to navigate. I've certainly seen worse code bases.
Okay. It's probably the best you can get from inherited code, right?
That's worse.
Okay, well, I'll give everybody then their 4 minutes back, and we have lots of MandE work, I think, coming up. We have still have more work to do in 4 different implementations right now, and then there's the IRD stuff, and there's a lot of cleanup. So probably everybody, on this call will be associated in some way. I don't think this is going to be this isn't just like a interest.
Right, yeah. and I think that'll probably ramp up more at the end. After the 19th.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think we have work to do after the 19th on this, if that's the RHAV work.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Figure
you.
out what everybody called me about. Thank you. Bye.